Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Hi, I'm just glad to be able to talk. I'm battling this cold, and I thought we might do the ultimate disruption today where I would just do a TED silence. So I'm just so happy to be able to say anything. First, let me introduce myself. I'm George Barrett. I'm chairman and CEO of a company called Cardinal Health. Some of you may know us. We're headquartered here. I say here in Columbus, although we're actually in Dublin, Ohio, but we are in the Columbus area. We're a company of some considerable size. We have about 37,000 people or so scattered around the world in 70 countries. We're a company that's ranked among the top 30 among the Fortune 500 companies. So a fairly large company. We do annual sales in the range of $100 billion. So very large. We're very active around the healthcare system, and I'll just try to give you a little bit of a sense for that. On any given day, the next 24 hours, millions of people in the United States alone will come in contact with products and services that we provide, which is a pretty intense responsibility, and our people take it very seriously, and as the leader of the company, I take it very seriously, and recognize that, for example, if we don't do our job well, 48 hours from now, some surgery that's supposed to happen can't happen. So it is one of the responsibilities that I feel as the chairman and CEO of this company to make sure that the healthcare system that we serve is served well. But I have other stakeholders, and I just wanted to share that with you a little bit and then go from there. So we have these 37,000 employees whose lives depend on our course being logical and strategic, and whose careers depend on the things that we do and the opportunities to develop their lives and their careers. And they have families. And so every day I think about that responsibility to serve them. And then we have these shareholders. We're a public company. And so we've got people that invest their money in our company. And that might be their pension funds, and their retirement savings might be dependent on how we do. So this responsibility is another part of my life. And maybe I'll just share you a quick story about how quickly that can influence, or I can influence that in a positive or negative way. Actually, I got back late last night from an investor day in New York where we share our strategies and our activities and our plans for the future. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I did this, and it was a little bit of a difficult time for the company, and we were in transition. And I went in front of the financial community, the investment community, and I said, listen, we are going to course correct. There are some things that we need to do to get ourselves in a different direction, and we're going to have a terrific trajectory. But at first, we're going to have to bite the bullet, and we're going to decline a little bit for the first year. Well, in the first 5 minutes, our stock price probably went down 6%, and then over the next 24 hours, about 19%, and $1.5 billion of value of the company disappeared because I didn't do a very good job of articulating sort of who we are and where we're going. So it was just a reminder of how quickly, in this role, I can affect things. So I'm going to stop for a second and just tell you that I just introduced myself in a way that I never do. I never introduce myself by what I do, or what my title is, or what my responsibilities, or my burdens, or any of that. I introduce myself as who I am. So if you're like most people, as I was sort of going through that, you're going through a cognitive process. We all do it. I gave you a couple of data points about our company and what size we are and what my title is. And this suit is actually a data point, right? It tells you it's the uniform of the CEO. And so we all do this process, and we fill in the blanks, and you form a picture. And it's possible that would include things like what my background is, what I studied in school, maybe what my parents did, or where I grew up, or what I do with whatever spare time I might theoretically have, what my hobbies are, what my politics are. And it's just the natural process that we all do. We just fill in the blanks. It's the confirmation bias that our brain does. And it might turn out to be right, but it might not be. So I'm going to take my jacket off here, if that's okay. I would not normally have worn this. Thank you. So let me tell you actually a little bit more, not about my title or my responsibility, but who I am. So I grew up in Connecticut. I'm the fourth of 5 children. I grew up with a father, therapist, terrific amateur musician, and a mother who is a poet and a teacher. Poetry is a huge money-making endeavor. as you know. So I really was raised in this environment, all about how to make some money. All of my family members are musicians and artists in some form, and that's what I grew up in, a house that was just filled with music. And as the fourth of five, it was not optional for me. Not that anybody told me to, it was just sort of osmosis that I had to do that. So I learned how to play piano and guitar and at a very young age, 4 or 5, played French horn a couple of years later, and was a singer my whole life. But actually, unlike my other siblings, a number of whom went on to be professional musicians, sports was a huge part of my life, which explains this silly picture, and those shorts, which were the longest shorts that we could find in high school, which is incredibly disturbing. So sports was the way I self-identified. It was a big part of my life, and I was always a musician and an athlete. That's the way I saw myself. And through my life, off I went to college, and I was a varsity athlete in college, and had some hopes of maybe following some of my teammates and friends into professional soccer after I finished. And about 3 weeks into my junior season, that all came to a crashing halt with an injury that ended my career. And suddenly, I had to sort of disturb my own identity. Everything that I'd sort of self-identified with suddenly became academic. And I was incredibly lucky at that moment that I had this other passion, this other part of my life that had been, in many ways, just as big a part of me as the sports. But I identified myself in this other way, and I was really lucky. I had this community of people that were ready to sort of catch me when I fell in college, and a faculty that really was eager to see if I could explore this other side of myself. And so I did, and I immersed myself in the music, and at the urging of one of my professors, I was studying history, and I got a degree in music. But I was encouraged to get a degree in music, which I did, and I sung in pretty much everything I could possibly sing. And with some inspiration from a faculty member who had sent a tape of a recital I had done off to someone who was a vocal coach in New York, who trained a lot of the great opera singers. Off I went to New York to audition, and the next thing I know, I'm being invited to New York, and I went to New York to sing. So that is sort of a strange route. I don't know how well that fits the model that you were building in your head about my upbringing. So I was in New York. I started in the classical world, quickly moved into the world that I probably felt more comfortable in the pop and rock world. And I was doing jingles and studio work and singing in clubs, and realizing that I was singing on a stage that 15 years earlier Bob Dylan had sung on. And it was an extraordinary time. I realized fairly quickly, I shouldn't say so quickly, over a couple of years, that as my music career started to evolve and the momentum started to grow, that I loved the music part of it, the art part of it, and I actually hated the business part, which is sort of ironic. So, being on stage and being in the studio were total joy for me. The rest of it, the agents and the self-promotion and the turning night into day and day into night, just were not my thing, and I sort of took this detour. And thought about, well, I want to have a family, I want to have a normal life, and so I thought maybe I'd go to law school. And through conversations with my then girlfriend's father, a business opportunity came up, and with him, and completely impulsively, I took this opportunity. So there I go off into business. Not a business person anywhere in my family. They all thought I was out of my mind. And so I started this and loved it right from the scratch. And it was a small company. I got to touch everything and learn very quickly because I knew nothing. And I went back and got an MBA during the course of this, and I think I probably was the only music major in my MBA class. Not a lot of that going on. So what was interesting about that time is my career advanced pretty quickly, and as a leader, I always felt quite comfortable. But as a leader in business with this weird background, I didn't feel that comfortable. I was sort of self-conscious about it, actually. So if people would talk to me, I wasn't that reluctant to share my sports history with them. But my music background, my artistic side was something I sort of kept because, again, we have this sort of self-image thing that we all do. So for me, there were things that lined up with what a CEO is supposed to be like, look like, studies like, all those things. And even as I sort of evolved, it took me a while to get comfortable with that. Eventually, I became increasingly comfortable with that background, but never really crossing the line to sing in public, actually. So I got more comfortable with what this was for me. But I never could feel like I could cross that line of singing in public for an assortment of reasons. I wasn't sure how that would look and how it would be perceived. Would it be dignified? Would it be somehow diminish my professionalism? It's a very interesting dynamic. So I did, however, begin to come to grips with how music has affected the way I lead. And so I just want to share a couple of those thoughts with you. Some are very obvious, that you train as you do in sports, and so the disciplines that are involved are part of what you have to do to be a musician. You have to sit in a practice room for hours, and it's for gratification that's going to be much later on. The left brain, right brain thing, it's hard in a world that's moving this fast to not want to connect the creative part and the cognitive part of the way we work. But I thought there were two other things that sort of jumped out at me that maybe I'd share with you that I think affected the way I lead and how the music part connects. So part of it really has to do with sort of this background and the story that I tell. Because my background was different and my route was sort of circuitous, I'm maybe a little bit slower off the trigger to fill in the blanks and to do that cognitive process of defining someone by the few data points that I get. And so as a leader, I enjoy the idea of learning as much as I can slowly about who it is I'm leading. And I try not to rush to that judgment or fill in those blanks too quickly. And I think it just helps me as a leader see people in a more holistic way. The other part of it, to me, is this listening aspect. And I'm going to try to describe this to you. I think musicians are trained or intuitively learn how to listen differently for different things. And I'm going to, if my voice can, I'm going to channel Barry White, for any of you who remember, for a moment. But in some ways, we learn to listen for different lines. And so I just want to take an example. So I don't know if there are classical music fans in here at all, but Beethoven's Seventh Symphony slow movement is one of the famous movements in all of history. And here's how it goes. Dum, 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 dum. That's it, basically. 3 notes. What makes that extraordinary is all the stuff that's happening around it. It starts with the low strings, and then the high strings come in, and woodwinds come in, and it layers in. All the tone and the texture comes from all that other sound. All that other sound. I'll give you more, not contemporary example, a rock example. Eleanor Rigby is one of the most famous songs in rock history, right? Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where her wedding has been. That's it. It's like a nursery rhyme. It's a simple tune. What makes that piece extraordinary is that it's surrounded by string quartet. That's what actually creates the sound of that, what really sounds like a nursery rhyme of a song. The whole tone of it is created by these other things. And I think in some ways, for me as a business leader, I try to listen with that other ear. I try to listen for the sounds that may not be quite as obvious when I'm talking to a customer or I'm sitting in a meeting. I'm trying to make sure that I'm listening for all of those other things that shape context and that help us make decisions. So in some strange way, I actually think it influences me. So I'm going to give you a quick epilogue here. Remember I said for 25 years, I did not sing in public. And about 6 months ago, I had a chance. I'm on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame board. And I had a chance here in town to sing with a group of traveling minstrels, including some other business leaders. First of all, I was incredibly nervous, which I never used to get singing. I was nervous because I was worried about what everybody would think, and would it look professional, would it look dignified, would I be as good as I thought I was supposed to be, or the way I used to be. And here's what I discovered once I relaxed on stage. Within about 10 minutes, I felt like I'd come home. I was so happy. The other thing was that the reaction of people, and I'm going to share sort of 3 different reactions. My colleagues, I think, in town, other business people, I think it was a fun night. Nobody was there judging it. It was just sort of letting go. It was a fun night. For people in the arts in town, the artists, the musicians, they saw this as support to them. This was a statement of my support to the work that they do, whether or not that's the ballet or the opera or the rock scene or what's happening at Shadowbox, Pro Musica, the symphony. To them, it was my making a statement of support. The most powerful one for me, though, in a way, was the response of some of our employees. Remember, I was really worried about how this would be seen. Here's what they told me. Thank you for showing a side of yourself that we don't know. Thank you for sharing with us some part of yourself. And I hadn't really thought about it. I was completely preoccupied by how I would sound. They weren't. They were seeing something else. They were saying, you're showing a genuine side of yourself, and that means you trust us in some way. So it was a really powerful lesson. As leaders, and I'd say this to anybody, there is always some part of yourself you have to hold to yourself and keep private. And the more public you are, the more you have to have some of that. But I do think, in a way, it helps to be able to show a part of yourself, the genuine self. Wearing blue jeans doesn't make you genuine, right? Although I wish I had them on right now. So, and maybe at a time, if you think about what's happening around us in our society, at a time where the breakdown in trust between people and their institutions is pretty profound and pretty damaging, maybe just showing a little bit of yourself, a little bit of that genuine self, is a powerful thing. And as a leader, I was happy to be able to do some of that, and so appreciative that the people that are part of my organization saw in me something different than what I was worried about. So that's my story. I appreciate your listening. Thank you.